Good luck. Now, how would you feel if a photographer followed you and your children while you're out and about, and then they published the pictures taken online for everyone to see? Well, this is exactly the position our next guest found herself in. Hannah Weller, the wife of British musician Paul Weller, is now campaigning for greater protection for children in the media. Here to tell us more, it's Hannah herself. Hannah Weller. Hello. Hannah, tell us a little bit about it's called the Campaign for Children's Privacy. How did this all come about?
Well, my experience was that a couple of years ago, my family were on holiday and Paul took the children out for the afternoon shopping, and a man was just followed them around all afternoon taking photographs.
Unknown to him? You didn't spot him or anything?
No, he did. No, he did. Sorry, at first we didn't know, but he saw him and asked him to stop.
Right.
But he was very aggressive, and then he carried on taking photos, and later on we saw them published on the Mail Online. And when we saw the photos, we realised that they'd been followed all afternoon, which, you know, was upsetting. It's just, I think that any parent would feel disgusted if they found themselves in that position, that, you know, someone had invaded their children's privacy like that and made their identity known to the whole world on one of the world's most visited websites. So
was the problem that you could see the children's faces? If they'd been pixelated, would that have made it a little bit better for you? Or
I think the instance in which they were followed around obviously would have happened either way. That was a distressing situation, but if the photos were pixelated, it would have made me feel a lot better that their identity wasn't being revealed and so their safety wasn't being compromised potentially. But I also think that if this campaign is successful and we do achieve a law which says that it's not allowed to, that the publications are not allowed to print pictures of children, their faces unpixelated without the parents' consent, and consent is the key, because it should be the parents' decision, I believe. You know, it's a parent's right to decide whether or not they want to have their pictures of the kids in the paper, and if they're asked and they say, yeah, we'd love that, then that's fine. But for the decision to be taken away from them, I think, is unfair. And so if the law came in, I think that would act as a deterrent, and maybe not so many children would be chased around parks, you know, because the photographer would know that they weren't going to make any money from the photos.
But there'll be some people who say, Hannah, that they wouldn't have been chasing your children if they weren't the children of a famous person. And while obviously a parent is a parent is a parent, you feel protective towards your children anyway, there are some that might say that that's what comes with being famous and you just have to put up with it.
I agree when it comes to celebrities being photographed in their private lives. I think, you know, it's unfortunate side effect of the job, and you take the rough with the smooth. But I think that children are children, and it doesn't matter who their parents are. They are completely, they don't have any choice in the matter, you know, and they need just as much protection as other children, sorry. And also this can affect anyone. There's a really good example the other day, actually, of a Telegraph article where there was a young child being told off by his mother on the beach, and
there we go. There it is.
And they actually took the decision to pixelate the face, which I'm massively impressed about, and I think this is exactly what we're asking for. You know, it doesn't detract from the story, it doesn't infringe on press freedom, it doesn't create any kind of safety issues for the family or for the child, and that's what we're asking for. But unfortunately, they're not that's quite rare. You know, there are lots of people who don't do that.
Well, I can see where you're coming from, and I fully appreciate that your children haven't asked to be the children of famous people, and that their privacy should be respected. And at the moment, there's a voluntary code where editors are supposed to decide, you know, if it's in the public interest or not. And I can see all the shortcomings in that. Now, as a former newspaper editor and a journalist, I see one fundamental flaw in your well-intentioned campaign, which is that every night on the television news we see the children of war and refugees photographed without their permission, lying in hospitals and refugee camps. Now, are you seriously proposing that campaigning journalists and war reporters go around the world getting clearance from the parents, because it's not practical apart from anything else? So, and the other thing is, we need to see these pictures of these suffering children. We need to have these children photographed in war so that we give money to the causes that are helping them.
Absolutely, that's a brilliant point. It's a really good point, and the answer to that is that there will be a public interest exception. If it is in the public interest to see the images, and often, more often than not, these children are not identified. So it's also a bit different, you know, but there's the identification.
Well, they do photograph children at funerals in war zones, and you could argue, well, that's an intrusion on grief. What I'm saying is, who decides that it's in the public interest?
A lot of it comes down to common sense as well, you know. I think that if it's children fleeing from a war zone or something like that, then it is important. It's important for the press to be able to show the public what's happening, you know, in the outside world, and to feel passionate about it and things. But when there's a big difference between that and a child being photographed on the swings or on the way to school and things like that. So it is a really valid point, but the answer is there is a public interest
we'll have
exception.
to leave it there, I'm afraid. But thank you for coming on to talk about your cause. It's Hannah Weller, everyone. Thank you. That is it for today. Tomorrow it's a Loose Women special when we celebrate this year's Armed Forces Day. All of our audience will be military families, and